Okay, this is the BattleCry paper prototype using Lucid Charts. I'm going to first show you a recording of one of the UX testers. We had several UX testers, most of which are minors, so I did not have direct permission, written permission to record them. So I'm using my son, who I'm giving permission to record him for this experiment. So let's take a look at his interactions with it, and then we'll go over it in detail.
This is UX testing of BattleCry paper prototype 4 with Xander Schwartz. All right, Xander, go ahead and go into it.
All right. Oof. There we go.
All right, any comments?
Could be easier to pick and choose on whatever the yellow thing is. I'd like to know what that's about, and the water, how you can maneuver through that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Evan Schwartz, and we're going to take a look at the BattleCry paper prototype. This was developed with Lucid Charts, and we'll go ahead and jump into it. So right off the bat, this is the title screen, and I'll go ahead and edit in the end user UX testing we did. I went through several iterations with some of the local kids that are on my testing team here in the neighborhood. Video recorded my son, just he's ultimately the only one I have permission to record. But ultimately we'll go ahead and jump in and get through how the prototyping went. Not a lot of comments on the title page, so I'll take that as it was good enough to get through. No one really kind of dove on it. I'm going to kind of look over here on my other monitor so that I can see. My eyes aren't nearly as good as they used to. The BattleCry comes in using the main menu system, so we've got these high-level sections. There was a little bit of just, fighting with the Lucid Chart paper prototyping, but all in all, it was pretty well. Noting some things here, and then the lighter colored notepads are my UX testing revisions. So icons and buttons use touch select, so that's what the mouse is sort of demonstrating here as we go through each one of the menu screens. My mouse is a little sensitive, so it was a little bit challenging for some of the folks. Lists such as this use the swipe gesture up and down. We already have a prototype of that construct, so this is a little bit more graphically pleasing for those various icons. All the icons, just as a note, and I demonstrate this a little bit further on, but all the icons will have a touch and hold capability so that you can do a pop-up and see what that means. So in the case of the ranking icon, it'll tell you how many wins that player has, as they'll remain at a specific rank within a range of wins, plus or minus 10. The speaker icon is pretty self-evident. That's playing that player's initial battle cry they use to start the game. One of the revisions is my first round of UX testing. I had essentially and this is just my own limitation. I have a hard time seeing colors. So when I built these icons the first time, I had a bright red color, and then I had a lighter color, which I didn't realize at the time is completely gray. So it matched my disabled icon. So I had to go back and revise all the colors to use sort of a Docker color to denote that it's not currently selected, but it's also not disabled. So that was a bit of a disheartening change, but I see their point, because ultimately on the first revision they popped this open and they didn't think they could click any of these buttons because they all look like this, so they were all disabled. So we have the Battles main menu button, which essentially has a submenu attached to it. It shows you active battles, pending battles, battles that are pending, whether or not, and here's an example of the touch and hold capability, whether or not it's you versus waiting for someone, or in this case, someone has sent you a direct challenge through like the friends list, and it's waiting for you to accept it, in which case you get the BattleCry icon. Open matches, these are ones that essentially are available for you to join that other people have initiated. Again, it gives you their rank. You can listen to their battle cry, and then you can issue a battle cry if you want to join that game. Completed, this is sort of a history of games that you want. Still working out some of the details around the friendship list. I'd gotten a request, I thought I'd noted it, but I'd gotten a request of, hey, this might be a good place to friend a player. I currently have that friend icon sitting in gameplay, so that may be a revision that comes down the pipe. But essentially this allows you to kind of go in. Since the nature of the game is going to be transactional, so I take my turn, it records a turn, it takes your turn, kind of like chess. The expectation here is I should be able to set the map back up and play those turns in sequence. So if you ever want to go back and replay a game, we should be able to do that quite easily. And of course, a new game, it's giving you a little hint here that you may be at your maximum number of simultaneous games. Here's a quick link to the shop. There's a shortcut button to get to the shop and essentially purchase some increased game slots. So I've got 3 tiers here. You can, for 99 cents, you can buy an extra one. For $3, you can buy 5 extra ones, and if you throw down the $9.99, you can get an unlimited play. And oops, it does bounce around a little bit. Essentially created a game by recording your battle cry. So essentially you click this, and this sort of would show what your current rank is, and you click that to create your game. So there's a couple of options from there. I'm going to jump back just to show how I linked this. I can do that at the go back into it. I can get to the gameplay through one of those icons, or I can get back to that gameplay through playing a new game, which essentially does the same thing, right? And again here, the nature of the map, and I've got a lot of little caveats here. This is the same thing. I had wrong colors here, so I had to update these icons to make them meaningful to players to understand what to do with them. They looked disabled to begin with. But the map was going to be about the most challenging. That's where I got most of my questions during UX design, because in the paper prototyping it's hard to do a multi-step click. So the expectation here is you'll see a variety of these hexes in various colors. Again, the color challenging here, I do one-off demonstrations to make it stand out. But just to explain it, that if you own it, it'll have a green highlight around it. If it's unowned, it'll either be white or yellow. I haven't quite decided on what looks better. And then if it's enemy owned, it'll be a red highlight. So in this case, it shows that you will be able to swipe to move the map around, to navigate the map. The map will use the 3D texturing for Unity for terrains, just to give it a little bit more pop rather than this very iconic looking look and feel, but that was a little bit difficult to do inside the paper prototyping. But I think we get the point. And you basically have your three phases here. So this is the map phase where I'm interacting with the map. This is my hero phase where I'm upgrading and purchasing heroes. This was a pretty good feedback I got during UX design, where they were essentially saying, I'm having them do the math in their heads, right? Level 3, you get plus 10 per level, so I guess it'd be plus 30. In all fairness, that did not follow Gestalt principles, right? And UX design, where I'm not supposed to make the user do math and calculate in their head. So this is likely going to be redesigned, where it's essentially going to show, and the recommendation was show me where my hero is, and then show me where my hero will be after I do the purchase, right, from the purchase icon. So that, to me, that was a good feedback. Right now, I just sort of left this in place. I got to I got to do a little bit more research on exactly what the best process. I think I've seen upgrades where it showed me where they were and where they're at, and a good game that I've been playing that I can pull from that'll have that is Siege Titan Wars. They do a lot of that upgrading the cards. So I'm going to go back and take a gander at that and see if I can't use that as an example. So essentially, there's a maximum of 10 levels for each of these heroes, so you can keep purchasing and the price will go up and until they reach level 10, in which case these icons will disappear. Similar things with the buffs. Buffs are pretty much, you buy them and they're consumable, so there's not a leveling of buffs. So if you just purchase them, you can get another buff. Didn't get a lot of feedback and comment here, but to much of the same vein, while I'm purchasing, I'll probably want some way to denote how many of these flaming arrows, how many of these fortified walls I currently have. So that was maybe just something I came up with while I was watching them play and their feedback on the heroes. Most of their focus was on the heroes, surprisingly. So anyway, back to, this is just a general map play game, and I can click on a cell, and at this point it's just I'm clicking on a cell that I own, so I'm trying to denote that through the green highlight. And as I'm pointing out here, the paper mockup tool, Lucidchart, is pretty cool, but it really doesn't, or I couldn't figure out how to do a multi-step interaction, right, that I wanted to click here and then click there. So I resorted to note-taking here to identify that. So when you click a cell, you'll have an opportunity to deliberately attack, reinforce, or add buffs, but if you click a cell you own and you click a cell you own, the expectation is you're wanting to reinforce that cell. If you click a cell you own and you click a cell you don't own, the expectation is you want to attack that cell to make that more of a touch-friendly type of thing. And then again, you can only add buffs to cells that you, or sectors that you own. So we'll go through the reinforcement process. So at this point, it's demonstrating that I'm reinforcing between these two hexes. These arrows will give me granular control to move, and I can hold them down, and the longer I hold them down, the faster they move. I can do a move all, or I can apply buffs to the sector at that particular time. This was sort of a UX revision. I have two versions of this screen, one for combat and one for reinforcement. So I just updated the one for reinforcement based on the revision labels, is to let the player know how many they've selected, assuming that there's you might have 10, 15, 20 of them. You don't want to have to go searching through the list to understand why it's not giving you what you want if you accidentally selected one. So I thought that was a good idea, so I noted that. At this point, we're just sort of going to go through the various motions. The green flags are reoccurring iconography that you own that territory. Clicking on the map, this is an example of essentially me going back to my reinforcements. I click on the map again to show this is me targeting a unowned sector. In other words, there's someone there, but it's not owned by my opposing player. So this is just sort of a neutral territory, for lack of a better term. This icon with the shield kind of identifies that. These stars denote unknown buffs, so if they're all white, there's no buffs, but they'll fill in up to 3, letting you know that there's at least 3 buffs there. Buffs are the only secret in the game when it comes to doing combat. You don't get to see what buffs are on that terrain, but you can see the units there, and you can understand what the resource value is for that territory. And then since attacking a unowned and an enemy-owned territory is the same, I went ahead and moved on to the enemy to really flesh out the combat. So once again, you've got your mountains, you've got your resource value, you've got your attack and defense buffs per unit, and then of course denoting this as enemy territory. and then we'll go ahead and click on the attack. So at this point I'm going to attack from my owned green sector to an enemy red mountain territory. This is what's currently there. You're not seeing or know any buffs at this point associated with that combat, and you can select your hero, which hero you want to be participating in this combat. You can basically apply your bluffs. Now at this point you would have had to have pre-purchased them. You can only select purchase buffs at this point. Now since this is a reuse screen, I'm sort of mixing defense and attack based buffs. Haven't made the decision yet whether or not buffs are going to fall cleanly into those two categories, or whether they may have multi-use. It may be partially attack and partially defense. Still working that out. And then, of course, once you've got it set up, this denotes here's my enemy, here's me. If this was neutral territory, that would be the shield icon. So I'd summon my here. Here I would do the recording of my battle cry, and it would come to the battle screen saying, here's what I had summoned, here's what's here, here's all the applied buffs, here's my applied buffs. And once combat is ensue, you can't abort out of it. I believe on the last screen there was a note saying that if for some reason I did want to abort out before this point, all I need to do is click on any other cell just to abort, just to click away from this little modal diagram that's popping up on the screen. And then I can hit continue, and that essentially walks through the battle. You're going through the process. Make sure there's nothing I failed to this showing you how many resources you're generating around based on your own territories and the resource value. This is how many resources you have that you have to spend in your various shop in-game or gameplay type shops. So I believe that's it for the prototyping. Had some really good feedback from some of the kids. Honestly, while I'm going to focus on some of the cleanup of the graphics, I don't think that they cared too much. Most of the conversation I had around the map was they wanted to make sure the map was procedurally generated, which it will be. They wanted to be able to click and inspect the map to understand its resource values, and they wanted to be more interactive with the map than the dialogue. So all of those things, and of course, the funny thing is nobody really read the messages, words and things, not interesting to them. So I didn't have any real pushback on the iconography. Everyone kind of got it, I guess, for lack of a better term. So thought that was pretty good choices on icons. May have an opportunity. I'm going to try to keep these basic and simple, that if my friend Mitch is able to muster up, I can throw him some of these baseline graphics and see if he can improve on these icons. But ultimately, to my shock and amazement, the sort of digital or 8-bit graphic type of theme seems to be taking hold. For these types of casual games, the graphics are nice to have, right? They're a wow, but less important than the meat of the game. Still got a lot of excitement level amongst my testers, so I would say the overall experience was positive. The takeaway for me is some of the cleanup I already did on the UI, making sure the colors match so that it gave some affordances on what to do, or at least didn't give wrong affordances. And then, of course, the change around upgrading your hero. I'm going to spend a little time reworking that. Thank you.